So we're going to talk a little bit about cell reproduction, mitosis and meiosis. But before we look at mitosis and meiosis as two forms of cell reproduction, I want to talk just a little bit about a few terms used to count chromosomes. So chromosomes exist in the nucleus, and they're made of DNA and protein that are complex together. But chromosomes are made up of units called genes, and the genes control activities that occur within cells. So the chromosomes come in pairs, and the pairs are numbered from 1 to 23. There's a couple terms that we'll be using. One is haploid and the other is diploid. Haploid is represented by a capital N, and a haploid set of chromosomes would be 23 chromosomes, where you have one member of each pair. A diploid set of chromosomes is represented with an algebraic expression, 2 times n, or 2n, where the n value is 23. And 2 times 23 would be 46. And a diploid set of chromosomes is a full set of chromosomes where you have 23 pairs. So there's 2 chromosomes in each pair, and 23 pairs would be 46 chromosomes all total. So let me just show you how 2 haploid sets of chromosomes equal a diploid set. So the chromosomes are numbered from 1 all the way to 23. And you have 2 copies of each chromosome. And the chromosomes are numbered, as I said, from 1 to 23. So each haploid set contains one member of each chromosome pair. So you have a copy of chromosome number 1, and then you have another copy of chromosome 1, because you have 2 copies of each pair. This would be chromosome number 2 in this haploid set, and that would be the other copy of 2 in the other haploid set. Of course, this is going to be chromosome 3 in this haploid set, and you have another copy of 3, because you have 2 copies of each of the 23 pairs of chromosomes. So the haploid sets would go all the way down to the 22nd pair, and the first 22 pairs of chromosomes, numbered from 1 through 22, which would be 44 chromosomes all total, are known as the autosomes. The 23rd pair of chromosomes are kind of interesting because they're referred to as the sex chromosomes, and they differ between the sexes. So both sexes have a 23rd pair, but they're the only pair they're referred to by letter designations. So in females, the 23rd pair of chromosomes would be 2 X chromosomes, whereas in males, the 23rd pair of chromosomes would be an XY combination. The Y chromosome is unique to males. So the 23rd pair of chromosomes are referred to as sex chromosomes because they determine the sex of the child. And the sex of the child is determined by which set of reproductive organs form during embryogenesis. So during embryogenesis, if the embryonic cells contain an XX pair of chromosomes, then the embryonic cells will develop a female set of reproductive organs. You get ovaries, fallopian tubes, the uterus, and the vagina. And if the embryonic cells during embryogenesis, across the first 8 weeks of a pregnancy, are XY for the 23rd pair of chromosomes, then during embryogenesis, a male set of reproductive organs would form. There would be testes, a penis, seminal vesicles, prostate gland. And whichever set of reproductive organs are present at birth determines the sex of the child. So with that, we can talk a little bit about mitosis and meiosis. So mitosis is a type of cell reproduction that occurs in cells known as somatic cells. These are the cells that make up the organs of the body. And mitosis, as a type of cell reproduction, occurs during growth, repair, and maintenance. So during embryogenesis and fetal development, as new cells are added, as organs get bigger and bigger, that would be mitotic divisions contributing to growth. Throughout life, we get injured, and those damaged body parts can be repaired, and that is a process that involves healthy cells dividing by mitosis to replace those that have been damaged. And within the various organs of the body, often there is cell turnover. In other words, cells might live for a couple days or a few weeks, maybe a few months, and then they die. And as cells die, just from a normal turnover, healthy cells will divide by mitosis to replace them. That's a maintenance function. So in mitosis, we begin with a diploid parent cell, and the diploid parent cell will create an additional nucleus. And now the cell with two nuclei will divide in half by a process known as cytokinesis into two diploid cells, each with the same number of chromosomes as the original parent nucleus. And the two cells that result from mitosis are referred to as daughter cells. Meiosis is the other form of cell reproduction, and it occurs within cells that are germ cells. And germ cells divide by meiosis to produce sex cells, or gametes, that are haploid. These would be the sperm and the egg. Meiosis, as a process, only occurs in the gonads. The gonads would be the sex organs where meiosis occurs. And that would be the testis and the ovary. In the case of meiosis, we begin with a germ cell, and after the end of several stages of meiosis, we produce four haploid cells. These would be the sex cells or the gametes, and each of these haploid sex cells would contain 23 chromosomes, or a haploid number of chromosomes. When meiosis occurs in the testes in guys, it generally isn't called meiosis, although you could call it that. In general, it's called spermatogenesis because it produces haploid sperm cells. So when meiosis occurs in the testes, spermatogenesis takes a germ cell through the stages of meiosis, and we end up with four haploid cells that grow a tail known as a flagellum. And spermatogenesis, as the meiotic process that occurs in the testes of guys, produces four haploid flagellated sperm cells. The flagellum, or the tail, is a swimming structure, and it whips back and forth, allowing sperm to swim through a fluid medium. So sperm typically are ejaculated with semen into the vagina during sexual intercourse, and they would swim by whipping their flagellum back and forth through the vaginal fluids, up into the uterus, through uterine fluids, into the fallopian tubes, where the fertilization of an egg may result in a child. Oogenesis is the meiotic process that occurs in the ovaries. In the case of oogenesis, a germ cell goes through the stages of meiosis and produces four haploid cells. Three of the haploid cells are very, very tiny, and they're known as polar bodies. And all three of these haploid cells that are polar bodies, they all die. None of them survive the meiotic process. The fourth haploid cell is very large. It's the one that survives and is known as the ovum. The plural form of ovum is ova. and the ovum is a haploid cell. The sperm cells and the ova are known as sex cells or gametes, and they're the products of meiosis. So we'll finish up by talking about an event that occurs in the fallopian tubes called fertilization. Fertilization is the fusion of a haploid sperm with 23 chromosomes and a haploid unfertilized egg with 23 chromosomes to make a diploid cell called the zygote. Zygote is also referred to as the fertilized egg. So there's two eggs. One is a haploid egg, known as the unfertilized egg, and the other is the diploid zygote, which is known as the fertilized egg. So this would be a flagellated sperm cell in the fallopian tube making contact with an ovulated egg. The sperm would be a haploid cell with 23 chromosomes, and the unfertilized egg would be a haploid cell with 23 chromosomes. When a sperm makes contact with the egg, a hole opens up, and the haploid nucleus from the sperm cell goes into the cytoplasm of the egg. And then the sperm cell falls off and dies. And the plasma membrane of the egg cell heals itself. These two nuclei actually fuse together into a single nucleus. And now the 23 chromosomes from the sperm cell join the 23 chromosomes from the egg cell. And when that occurs, we create a diploid cell. And this diploid cell that results from the fusion of sperm and egg is known as the zygote. The zygote is also referred to as an fertilized egg. So the zygote, as it forms, divides by mitosis into two cells that stick together. And after the first mitotic division, the two cells that form are the first two cells of what's known as the embryo. And then these cells would continue to divide and multiply and rearrange themselves into the organs and organ systems of the body for the next 8 weeks during embryogenesis. And after 8 weeks of embryogenesis, you no longer use the term embryo. Pretty much at that point, when all the organs and organ systems have essentially fully formed, you would call it a fetus. So the embryo, after a couple months, becomes the fetus, and then the fetus continues to develop for the next 7 months. And the first 2 months of embryogenesis and 7 months of fetal development would be the 9 months of a pregnancy that results in a newborn child.